الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So we are continuing our lessons of Kitab Al Tawheed, the book of monotheism, the book of Tawhid by Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad ibn Abdul-Wahhab rahimahullah. And it's been a while since our last lesson, so we'll go through a little recap. So the Shaykh, he begins by talking about the obligation of Tawheed, what Tawheed actually is, and why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has enforced it upon us. Where, what ayat, what ahadith, where in the Quran, where in the Sunnah has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us about Tawheed, told us that we should worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And we have three parts of Tawheed. And I asked this a few episodes ago, and some of the brothers didn't know. So we'll see if they know this time. The first, Tawhid al-Rububiyyah. What's Tawhid al-Rububiyyah? The oneness of Lordship. What does it mean? Rabi'. Last time I asked you, you didn't know. Tawhid al-Rububiyyah, the oneness of Lordship. What does it mean?
Believing in Allah and no one else.
La. Sah. What else?
The oneness of God, believe in the oneness of God.
What else?
Yeah, that's it.
Tell me. It's okay, 50%. Tawhid al-Rububiyyah is, as he said, believing in one God. That's only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's the God. Like it was also believing that He is the only one who creates. He's the only one who destroys. He's the only one who gives life, takes it away. He's unique in His actions. So something He does, nobody else can do something like it. He is unique in His own actions. The second of them, Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. Who can give me what Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah is? Ismail.
I don't know.
Yeah, Muhammad. Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. The oneness of worship. Think about it. What does it mean?
Like worshipping Allah.
Aywa. See? Worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Singling Him out. When you make dua, when you make salah, any type of worship is only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only to Him. Not to anyone else, not to a rock, not to a tree, not to a human being. Not to a prophet, not to a wali, not to an angel, not to a righteous person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And we have the third of them. Tawheed al-Asma' wa-Sifat. The oneness of the names and the attributes. This one's easy. Who can give me this one? So hey, in the name, oneness of the names and the attributes. What does it mean?
Like believing in the books and
Names and attributes. What does it mean? لا تضحك. تعرف ربيع؟
believing like in His names and that.
أيوة. You believe in His names, that His names are true. Like, not the books, names. That His names are true. That He is the most merciful, that He is the most forgiving. His attributes, that He comes down to the lowest heaven, that He's above His throne. This is believing in the oneness of His names and His attributes. So the Shaykh rahimahullah, he began in the first chapter explaining why this is obligatory on a person to believe. And he says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسِ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created man or jinn and mankind except to worship me. And we know that Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah is Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. And what's mentioned when we speak about Tawheed in this is Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. Because Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, if that is believed in, then the rest comes under it. Because if you believe and you worship only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, you worship Him alone for a reason. Why? Because He is the only God. He is the one who creates. He is the one who destroys. And what is that? Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. The oneness of Lordship. And if you believe He's the only God, and He's the only one worthy of worship, when He sends you information, you believe it. And that is Tawheed al-Asma' wa-Sifat. the attributes and the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He sent down in the Quran. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Rahmanir Rahim. These names that He sent down in the Quran and He's given to us, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has told us in the Sunnah. These names, they're obligatory for one to believe. Believing in them is Tawhid and Asma' al-Sifat. But after showing us the obligation of Tawheed, He moves on to the benefit of Tawheed. If knowing that it was an obligation wasn't enough for you to believe in it, He shows you the benefit of it. That it gives a person security in this life and the next, in the dunya and the akhirah. That in this dunya you're safe from the fitan, and you're safe from the dalal, from the misguidance of the shaitan. And in the akhirah, you are safe as well. You are safe from the hellfire. For in both worlds, you are safe. If that, the benefit of Tawheed, if that wasn't enough for you, He shows you, or the Shaykh explains, the fear of Shirk, the opposite. That if you commit Shirk, then you're going to go to the hellfire forever. If you associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your destination is Jahannam, the hellfire. And He also explains that if you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you worship Him alone and you have Tawheed, you will go to Jannah, whatever your sins may be. So much so that a person will have 99 scrolls of sins. These scrolls, when you roll them out, they are further than your eye can see. All full of sins. And the man will think, that's it, there's nothing else for me, I'm going to the hellfire. Like he'll have the card of La ilaha illallah, that there is no God worthy of worship except Allah. And with that card, he enters Jannah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enters him into Jannah out of His mercy. Why? Because of Tawheed, whatever his sins were. And you could have the most perfect person. He does everything, charity, all this, but because he does not believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and he does not worship Him alone, he goes where? To the hellfire. So once the Shaykh has given all this explanation for you to believe and for you to practice Tawheed, he shows how you should do it. He explains how prophets like Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, who's the role model in Tawheed, how he practiced Tawheed and how we should follow him in it. And after that, he explains that a person, when he knows this information and this fear of Shirk, he will go and he will give it straight away to the people around him. As if you see a crack in a dam that holds water, that stops the water from flowing. If you see a crack in it and you know if the water comes out, it's going to kill everybody. You're going to go, you're going to tell people, run away. Start with your family and start with other people. You're going to tell the people, run away. And just like that, you see the crack, the shirk in the Tawheed. You see people associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you know if you associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will lead you to your demise. You will go to Jahannam. So what do? You go out and you call people to it. And that is the first, when you give da'wah to a person, when you invite a person to Islam, or you invite a person to anything to do with the religion, you first start with Tawheed. And that is the most important of matters. More important than the salah, more important than the zakah, more important than anything that's going on. And shirk is more dangerous than murder, more dangerous than zina, fornication, more dangerous than any of these things. So in a place where this is happening, a person, his first thing should be is to give the call of Tawheed and tell the people to stay away from shirk. Then comes the salah and the zakah and everything else. And then he spoke about what Tawheed actually is, and he gave an explanation of it using different ahadith, and ayat. And now we go on to this chapter. باب من الشرك لبس الحلقة والخيط ونحوهما لرفع البلاء أو دفعه. The chapter that from shirk, that from associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is wearing rings. But not just rings on their own, wearing rings if you believe that they have a power, that they'll protect you. Or wearing ropes, little ropes or bracelets that you believe will protect you. Or anything like that, necklaces, amulets, whatever it may be. If you think that this is going to protect you, لِرَفْعِ الْبَلَاءِ, to take away the calamity, or to take away the pain, or to take away the disease, or push it away, أو دفعه, or push it away. And the Shaykh, rahimahullah, he speaks about this chapter after mentioning about Tawhid and Shirk. He will now start to explain the different types of Shirk, because a lot of people do these things and they don't know. Look at Turkey, everyone hangs these eyes that they believe protect them from evil eye and other things. This is Shirk. Like in a whole nation is built upon it. Why? Because of ignorance, they don't know. For the Shaykh now, he will start to explain a few of these matters that are Shirk. And a lot of them, a lot of people do not know about, and they do. So he begins with using the qawl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where he says, قُلْ أَفَرَأَيْتُمْ مَا تَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. Say, are these that you call besides Allah, these idols or statues or these rings and these things that you think can protect you other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? إِنْ أَرَادَنِيَ اللَّهِ بِضُرٍّ هَلْ هُنَّ كَاشِفَاتُ ضُرِّ. That if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wished to harm me, this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, say this to them. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wished harm upon me, would they take away that harm? أو أرادني برحمة هل هن ممسكات رحمته. Or if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted mercy for me, can they hold back that mercy? قُلْ حَسْبِيَ اللَّهِ. Say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sufficient for me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is enough for me. عَلَيْهِ يَتَوَكَّلُ الْمُتَوَكِّلُونَ. Upon him rely the reliers, or those that rely. So we see from this ayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he tells the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to pose a challenge. To pose a challenge to these people who believe that these other things will help them. And in the end, these things they can't. Just like the idols, when they used to call upon them, they could not help them. And these things are the same. These rings, these amulets, these ropes that they use to protect themselves from Allah, from evil. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes evil for you, whatever you do, you can take every single precaution in the world. Call upon every single person in the world. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes harm for you, you will get it. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes mercy for you, you will get it. Even if everybody tried to stop that mercy. And this is from believing in the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That everything that happens to you, no matter what you did, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have made that thing happen to you. And from the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is believing in that. And it shows that we need to have sabr, have patience. And we need to leave our matters to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because it was all written. We must have patience and rely on Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he used the hadith عن عمران ibn Husayn أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم رأى رجلا في يده حلقة من صفر فقال the Imran ibn Hussein he narrated that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he saw a man with a ring on his hand made out of brass, a type of metal, and he said, "Ma hadi, what is this?" The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, and the man said, "Qala," he said, "Qala min al-wahina," from the wahina. And the wahina is a type of disease that causes pain in the hand. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says here, فقال أنزعها فإنها لا تزيدك إلا وهنا فإنك لو مت وهي عليك ما أفلحت أبدا. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him, remove it, because it only brings you more pain. Because in the end, in the akhirah, it will lead you to pain. And because you are doing shirk, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish you in this life and the next. فَإِنَّكَ لَوْ مِتَّ. So if you died, وَهِيَ عَلَيْكَ مَا أَفْلَحْتَ أَبَدًا. If you die and it is on you, then you will never succeed. Neither in this life or the next. Why? Because it is shirk. And we know the person who commits shirk, he is going to Jahannam. So in the next life you won't succeed. And in this life you're disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so you're not succeeding. رواه أحمد بسند لا بأس به. But Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he narrated it with a chain that is okay. There's no problem with it. And this, with the Shaykh, he might use some hadith, some narrations that are weak. But the only reason that he uses this is to further support his chapter or his claim. But every time he speaks about something, the first hadith or the first ayah he uses, it's always sahih, it's always correct. Because this is the main point. Then the rest that comes after it is just helping. So this shows that wearing a ring for protection, it won't help you. And it's not allowed. And in the next hadith, and it says, وَلَهُ عَنْ عُقْبَةَ إِبْنِ عَامِرٍ مَرْفُوعًا مَنْ تَعَلَّقَ تَمِيمَةً فَلَا أَتَمَّ اللَّهُ لَهُ وَمَنْ تَعَلَّقَ وَدَعَةً فَلَا وَدَعَ اللَّهُ لَهُ وفي رواية من تعلق تميمة فقد أشرك. That Uqba ibn Amir, he narrated, and the narration reached him. But we bring it up to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whoever hangs an amulet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not help him. And whoever hangs a seashell, you see some people, they hang seashells, they go out and they hang them on themselves. They think protection, or it brings them some energy. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never give them calmness. And in a different narration, he says, whoever hangs an amulet, then he has committed shirk. And this is wadah, this is in front of us. This is clear. Shows that if you hang an amulet, some people, they hang amulets, some of the Muslims, they hang this Tawhid. They hang it and they think it will protect them. Afallahu anhu. May Allah forgive them. But it's clear here in the hadith that if you hang an amulet, again with that evil eye that we mentioned, if you hang an amulet, then it is shirk. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not help you. You're doing the opposite. You're hanging it for help. And in the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not help you. And it is shirk. So you won't be saved or helped in this dunya or the next. And then the Shaykh rahimahullah, he mentions another hadith. And this is the final hadith. And it says, وَلَإِبْنِ أَبِي حَاتِمٍ عَنْ حُذَيْفَةٍ أَنَّهُ رَأَى رَجُلًا فِي يَدِهِ خَيْطٌ مِنَ الْحُمَّةِ فَقَطَعَهُ وَتَلَا قَوْلَهُ وَمَا يُؤْمِنُ أَكْثَرُهُمْ بِاللَّهِ إِلَّا وَهُمْ مُشْرِكُونَ. that Ibn Abi Hatim narrated on the authority of Hudayfa, that he saw a man, he saw a man wearing a rope on his hand to protect him from a fever. So he cut it. And he said the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that a lot will not believe except, so they only believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala illa wa hum mushrikun, except they believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the condition of worshipping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this shows that doing shirk, associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you wear a bracelet or a rope or a ring for protection, that is associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it is clear. Because Hudayfa radiallahu anhu would not have mentioned the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the person that most people, they only believe as mushriks, as people that associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He would not have mentioned this ayah if the action was not shirk of the man wearing the robe. So from this chapter we can gain many things. Firstly, that a person is not allowed to wear amulets, necklaces, ropes, rings, if he believes they will protect him. The bracelets and necklaces for the men is clear, they're not allowed to wear. Like in general. If you believe that this ring or this thing that you're wearing is going to protect you, whether it's an evil eye on it, whether it is some dua, whatever it may be, that necklace is not going to protect you. That ring is not going to protect you, whatever it is made of. The only person that can protect you is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it is upon you not to disobey Him and not to associate partners with Him. And the second thing that this leads to is it leads to showing a person he must leave his trust with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he must not hope that anything else will save him, because only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will save him. And next lesson we will go on to the next chapter. باب ما جاء في الرقى والتمائم. The chapter, that which has came from the sayings that protect and the amulets and that sort. هذا وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه.